Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Jake Perrine to the show. Welcome, Jake.
Hello, everyone.
It's great to have you on the show, and before we get started and jump in, there will be major spoilers for any listeners who are tuning in. So if you have never played Secret of the Scarlet Hand, which by now I would hope everybody has, who's a big fan of Nancy, please don't listen. Go ahead, play the game so you can come back and listen to our conversation. Jake, what was your introduction to the voiceover industry overall?
Well, I have a theater background, and then I ended up in an audio engineering career. So I was like on both sides of the microphone, if you will. And I'm a ham at heart, and so people know me for doing silly voices and stuff. And so once upon a time, I think a friend of a friend recommended me for a couple things, and I've done some here and there, and I actually do some online teaching as well. So recording my own voice is something I'm well adept at this point.
What was your introduction to Her Interactive overall? Did somebody introduce you, or did you get an open call information about Secret of the Scarlet Hand?
I think it was somewhere in the midst of those two. I think somebody recommended me, and then I went to one of their auditions, and they put me in play. I certainly love playing villains because they're the most fun. They have the most dimension and color and wackiness, so I gravitated towards that one pretty quickly.
So speaking of villains, Taylor Sinclair overall, there we go. So yes. Taylor himself, did they tell you way in advance before they gave you the ending that you were the culprit? I believe
they hinted at such, and they let me sort of discover it a little bit through the reading of the different lines. But yeah, everyone was kind of winking and nodding through the whole thing, so I pretty much understood.
Was that only through the recording process, though, not through the audition process, or?
A little bit through the audition process. I think they didn't want to give it away in case they didn't, hire me as that character. But once they did, they were like, "Okay, you asked for it, you got it. You're going to be the villain."
How did you develop the voice for this particular character? Did they give you visuals to work off of, or?
The funny thing is, way out here on Orcas Island, I'm still playing a character that reminds me of that character on a regular basis. He's not the villain. He's kind of a bit of a Dr. Livingston-esque character who has adventures and wears khaki and is a bit silly and dopey. But I'm in a serial cabaret out here that I play this character that is kind of a comic relief character of the whole thing. But he has a similar voice. It's that British chap, who's very refined and a little snooty and all that. And so, once they showed me a couple drawings and read a couple of the lines, I was like, how about like this? And they were immediately said, yeah, that's the direction for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, because he's an art dealer, but we find out later in the game he's a black market smuggler as well. Mm-hmm. So he kind of plays both parts of the coin. And he tries not to let on about who he is or what he has done. So it's kind of interesting to see that, because when I first played the game, I had no idea. I was like, who is it going to be? I have no clue. So, overall it was like, But did you ever ask or get to know any of the other voiceover actors? Did they ever question you and be like, hey, do you know who it is? Because I don't.
I do remember there being like the person before me and the person after me kind of in waiting to do it. But the recording itself was very much isolated to just myself in the voiceover booth. So I didn't really get to overlap too much. And so when I finally saw the finished game, like that's how I got to see how it all fit together, and played through it and was surprised by all the twists and turns. It was great.
How long did it take to record his part? Because it seems like it's a little bit bigger because you have the ending to deal with in particular.
Sure. Yeah. No, it was probably a 2-hour process, I would say. And I did lots of takes of each of them, so they had stuff to choose from, and the engineer cut it together later into the versions they liked. So I remember one of the largest challenges of that one being pronouncing a lot of the different Mexican names. I don't think I'd ever seen the word Oaxaca before in writing. And so
wow, yeah, that's something I didn't even think of, because
yeah.
when you're playing the game, it just sounds like it comes so naturally to you, but that must have been difficult.
Well, take 7 did come very naturally, but the first 6 were not so good.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I had to phonetically write down a lot of the different names so I could pronounce them correctly, because I was very intent on not butchering the localized versions of those names.
Overall, for the game itself, your character kind of stays in his office for the whole time until the very end of the game. But when you finally got to, play the game itself, play as Nancy, and go through it, what was your initial reaction to hearing your voice in the game?
Oh, it was fun. I really liked how they mixed it all together, and I love the choices that they made in terms of the edits and takes that they chose. And it's a super fun way to experience a story like that. When I was a kid, my sisters had the entire Nancy Drew Hardy Boys book sets, and that was some of my earliest reading as well. So going back to that in a new and fresh way was super fun. I really appreciated what they did with it.
Would you be interested in coming back to voice maybe another character? Because you said you love doing other silly voices, so I can only assume you have some more up your sleeves.
Absolutely. That'd be an honor to do another one. I've had a lot of inquiry just from doing that one. Like people,
really?
Yeah, people have found me on the internet based on that character and contacted me. So
wow. So what other games have you done then?
Not necessarily games, but different little radio stuff, or character acting in Seattle. I somebody had heard my voice and wanted me to do some voiceover for a theater production and things like that. So random. The internet's a big, wild, woolly world, and people latch on to the strangest things. So
it's pretty crazy because that game came out long time ago. Yeah, and technically the internet wasn't what it is today, so I can only imagine the calls you'd be getting now.
Yeah, totally. Well, there's I think it went up on like my IMDb page for a while too, like that I'd done it as that was part of my credits there. So random. So random.
Well, speaking of being an art dealer, of course, do you have any particular artwork that you adore, or a specific painter or artist that you have always followed since a young age?
Oh gosh. My sister is a incredible artist, and now does graphics for television and whatnot. But I've watched the things that she brings home and is into, and as a theater artist, I've watched people who paint with light and with paint on sets, as well as visual artists. But right now, I'm also co-producing a musical festival here on the island, and we have a large visual component to it as well. We bring artists out both to show their work and to paint live at the event. And one of my all-time favorites right now is a guy named Eric Nez, And you can find his work online for sure. And he just has this incredible ability to work with paint. And now he's getting into like 3D virtual reality painting and some really incredible, newer type work as well. But his paintings, just his studio paintings, are breathtaking. So I'd say he's one of my favorites right now.
And you're still performing, right? So what projects can you tell us that you're going to be doing in the next couple of months? And if you have a website and want to mention that?
I teach theater at the middle school and high school level here on the island, as well as do some work with adults on the island for singing and performing, and do a lot of directing these days. So we're currently working on a movie musical. We're taking a K through 12 public schools kids and shooting a movie musical in and around their school, and it'll end in a dance at the school that will be the finale of the whole piece. So lots of different pieces here on the island. Surprising amount of theater happens out on this wee little island. I don't really have a website specifically for that, but jakeperrine.com is my sort of launching site for my music and different projects that I'm working on. So there's that. I worked in Boston area. That's where I grew up. And then New York and Chicago. I spent a year in each of those. And then 15 years in Seattle doing chasing theater and music in various forms. And now out here on this wee little island, I recognize that it's not, we're not making Broadway productions out here. That's not the goal. The goal becomes something about expanding people's notions of themselves, giving people an opportunity to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise had the chance to, or thought to, or the guts to. So I deal with that every single day. I mean, I think that walking in another character's shoes is not only healthy for you, but it's really an act of empathy. It's a way to expand your sense of yourself and what you can give to the world, and see someone else's point of view, which I think in this day and age is critical. I mean, we have so little. I think understanding where other characters and people come from is a valuable lesson and skill. So I would tell people to get into it and try it. And it's like any muscle that you have in your body. The more that you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. I was a painfully shy child when I was a kid, and it is totally overcomable. I actually did a TED Talk on that very subject of overcoming shyness that's out there on YouTube. So it's called 10 Steps to Performance Singing. And it's hilarious and very honest. So I think everybody can do it if they put their minds to it.
Well, Jake, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I hope we may hear you in another Nancy Drew game soon, because how many years has it been? I feel like it's been over 10 years since Secret of the Scarlet Hand, but who knows? Maybe Taylor Sinclair will make a comeback.
Yes. A sequel would be awesome.
That would be great. So thank you so much. And my final question for you is, if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
I would say creative, first thing that comes to mind. How everybody works so synergistically with each other and was super friendly, and that's the secret to a creative environment is people being kind and generous with their time and attention, and it certainly was that. So creative.